have been discussing about the theme on environmental ethics, which is a new paper being floated to semester 7, the fourth year, under DNEP UGCF, which is a part of the GE philosophy paper. And here today we would be discussing as to what is environmental ethics and what is the connection or the various approaches to environment. This is Dr. Ananya Barua, Associate Professor in the Department of Philosophy, Hindu College. So, the first thing first now, in the nature of environment, we must understand that environment refers to the complex, interconnected system that includes all living beings, plants, animals, humans, and non-living components, the air, water, soil, climate, landforms. Its nature is characterized by the following. Number one, interdependence. All elements of nature rely on each other. Disturbance in one part affects the whole system. Number two, dynamic and ever-changing process. Seasons, climate, cycles, evolution, ecological succession show that nature is constantly in motion. Number three, self-regulating mechanisms. Ecosystems maintain balance through natural cycles like carbon-nitrogen, hydrological cycles, and so on. Number four, unity of life and non-life. Now here in this we see that living organisms survive only through interaction with physical surroundings. Number five, finite resources, which is nature provides resources, but they are limited and vulnerable to overuse. Thus, the environment is an integrated, delicate, and interdependent system whose harmony ensures the survival of all species, thus making it interdependent, dynamic and ever-changing process, self-regulating, unity of life and non-life, and last but not the least, the finite resources. And because for these, we have been taking up the various isms that have a deep understanding or deep connection with environmental ethics, and we had talked about anthropocentrism. Now, anthropocentrism means that a human-centered worldview where nature is valued mainly for its usefulness to humans. And several historical forces have contributed to this mindset. Number one is the role of technology. Modern technology has strengthened the idea that humans can control, modify and dominate nature. And we do know that since the Industrial Revolution, the role of technology has been tremendous. So, Industrial Revolution, for example, created machines that allowed exploitation of forests, minerals, waters and land on a massive scale. Technologies like dams, mining, synthetic chemicals and mechanized agriculture encouraged the belief that nature is a resource bank for human progress, and that is where it was problematic. It was problematic because we know that rapid scientific advancements reinforced the view that humans are masters of the natural world and can fix or manipulate it at will. Digital and AI technologies further distance humans from ecological processes, making environmental damage seem invisible. Thus, technology often promotes the belief that nature exists to serve human needs. Now, let's talk about the role of economics. Modern economic systems, particularly capitalism, have deeply influenced anthropocentric attitudes. Nature is treated as capital, a commodity to be extracted, bought and sold. The economic growth is measured through GDP, not ecological well-being. cost-benefit thinking often values forests, rivers, or species only if they generate profit. Global markets encourage mass consumption, reinforcing the idea that nature is an unlimited storehouse. The logic of development often places human economic interest above ecological balance. Thus, economics fosters the idea that nature has value only when it contributes to human prosperity. Now, we also have the role of religion to look into. Certain religious traditions have been interpreted in ways that justify human dominance over nature. The Western monotheistic traditions, for example, biblical idea of human dominion over nature has sometimes been used to support exploitation of the earth. Humans see it as the crown of creation, reinforcing a hierarchy with nature at the bottom. Now, the anthropocentric religious thought, where some traditions emphasize human salvation or liberation while ignoring the non-human life. Rituals and practices may involve using natural resources without considering ecological consequences. However, it is important to note that many religions also teach deep ecological respect, but anthropocentric interpretations have historically dominated environmental attitudes. And this is something which we cannot really ignore. So, the environment that we see is a complex, interdependent system essential to all life. Yet, technology, economics, and certain religious interpretations have contributed to a human-centered worldview where nature is seen primarily as a resource for human benefit. This anthropocentric attitude has shaped modern development and environmental crisis, making it crucial to move towards more ecocentric, sustainable, and responsible ethical approaches. Now, if we talk about the legacy and criticisms, we see that teleology and some natural science claims conflict with modern mechanistic explanations. Empirical errors in biology are numerous, which of course have been later corrected. Ethical or political positions on slavery or women's role are not viewed as morally problematic. And of course, in philosophical rivals, Plato's transcendent forms versus Aristotle's immanent forms, where modern philosophers have debated the act vis-a-vis potency and the status of final causes, all contribute to the legacy of these key themes. We must understand that the environment is not as simple the way for a layman it might be. There is a huge complex interdependency that is undergoing, and this is the reason why so many isms have cropped up or the approaches that have cropped up in and around the environmental ethics. Now I think it is a good time to have a look at the PPT below about the various approaches and see how they are interconnected. Now, the approaches of anthropocentric, we see that the central focus is human welfare, survival, and development. The value of nature of anthropocentrism is instrumental value, which is basically and mainly only the usefulness to humans. The moral community includes humans only, and the justification that anthropocentrism had given via an environmental ethics approach is that protect environment because it benefits humans. That is, human is the end and environment is the means. So because it gives humans resources, health, economy, future generations, one needs to protect environment. And some of the thinkers who have upheld this position was Aristotle, and of course the modern development ethics. The approach of zoocentric or the sentient centric, we see that the central focus was that the animal are suffering and the well-being was essential. The value of nature for them is that intrinsic value for sentient animals ought to be there. The moral community for them includes humans plus animals that feel pain and pleasure. So unlike anthropocentrism, zoocentrism has been a little bit more broadening in their approach, where they have also included animals. The key justification is that it is wrong to cause unnecessary suffering to animals, and moral equality of interests. And the thinkers or traditions of this have definitely vocally largely has been Peter Singer and the utilitarianists. We also have the biocentric approach. Now the biocentric approach, the central focus is the life as a whole. So the value of nature for them is intrinsic value of all living beings. The moral community that it includes is humans plus all living organisms. So again, biocentrism is a step ahead of zoocentrism. For with zoocentrism, it was humans plus animals, but here it is humans plus all possible living organisms, not just animals. The key justification is that every organism strives to live, therefore it deserves respect. And the thinkers or traditions that followed it was Paul Taylor, Albert Schweitzer and others. We also have the ecocentric or the holistic view that talks about ecosystems of integrity, interconnectedness. The value of nature for them is that value lies in ecosystems, in species, in ecological wholes. The moral community here includes the entire biotic community. Now, when we say the entire biotic community, it is just not the land species or the sea species or the air species or the water species. It is anyone and everyone who happens to have a life. They are a part of it. The one who are a part of the biosphere, everyone is a part of the ecocentric or the holistic approach. The key justification for them is that a thing is right if it is preserved, it preserves integrity, stability, beauty of the ecosystem. Now these key ingredients, integrity, stability, beauty, are extremely essential. For as much as integrity is universal and objective, so is stability, but beauty, as you understand, is subjective. So something which may not be aesthetic for, say, the Homo sapiens, it could be for someone from the, say, the spider world. So it is not necessary that what doesn't make sense to us or what doesn't look beautiful to us needn't be beautiful for others. And by including the component of beauty or aesthetic, ecocentric or holistic has done a fabulous job by showing that besides integrity, besides stability, aesthetic too makes the true call. And the thinkers who supported it was, of course, Elder Leopold in his epic work, The Land Ethics. We also have the approach of deep ecology. Now, deep ecology, the central focus has been that there has to be a spiritual unity of humans and nature. The value of nature, they say, is the equal right of all beings to flourish. And the moral community includes all beings, living and non-living. The key justification is that humans are not superior. Ethical duty arises from deep ecological consciousness, and definitely the thinker has been Arnaise. Now, for deep ecology, which has been quite a revolutionary approach to environmental ethics, please understand, with their inclusion of all beings to flourish, they have also talked about the importance of equal right. And when they talk about equal right, they are also clear about the duties. So it is not just about duties, it is also about right, and this is where the deep ecology flourishes vis-a-vis its connection to environmental ethics. And Arne has done a brilliant job by espousing that one ought to be aware, even if they might be voiceless, even if they may not be the ones who could fight for their own right, but the ones who are blessed with voices ought to fight on their behalf, for it is all about a spiritual unity of humans and nature. Of course, many see it as a more utopian or a philosophical module, but deep ecology has its own favorite philosophical arguments as to why it ought to be celebrated. Then we also have the ecofeminism. Now, ecofeminism talks about the relations that held between environmental and gender oppression. The value of nature here is value based on equality, care, and non-domination. The moral community includes humans plus nature as oppressed others. And the key justification is that environmental destruction stems from hierarchical domination. Justice is ecological. Thinkers, of course, has been Vandana Shiva, Karen Warren, and others. Now, when we talk about ecofeminism, we must understand the philosophical debate of self versus the other. When I talk about self versus the other, here the self is taken as the women slash the oppressed clan slash the nature, and the other is everyone who is the dominant factor or who dominates nature, that is industries or capitalization, dominates women, that's men, patriarchy, and dominates the marginalized class, that's the privileged ones or the non-marginalized ones. So there is a very clear debate between self versus the other, and Vandana Shiva or the other such antheists have spoken how domination of women is equivalent to domination of nature, for nature is connected with women. So if capitalization or industrialization is harming nature, it can be mapped with women being harmed by man or patriarchy. So ecofeminism, as the very name suggests, is environmental friendly for women, and mostly it is a criticism which has been levied against ecofeminism, that nature is considered more pro-feminine or pro-women, where masculine is considered as the other. And the other thing is they also include the nomenclature of care here. And care, again, they feel is innate virtue of women more, for it comes naturally to women more than it comes to men. Of course, there are debates to think whether who is more caring, who has more healing power, but they go by this juxtaposition, which is women is equivalent to nature, which is the self, man, the patriarchy, is equivalent to the industrialization, the capitalization, the dominant factor. So one needs to tone down, one needs to understand, and that is only possible when man also activates the feeling of care, the feeling of healing, and women is only not reduced to care and healing. Otherwise, the debate between self versus the other will always be there. We have also seen or discussed about the indigenous or the relational ethics. Now, this indigenous or the relational ethics, here they talk about the sacredness and kinship with nature as the central focus. And the value of nature, they say that nature as living, sacred and relational. Also, their moral community here includes the entire natural world as kin. And there are key justifications. They say that ethics arises from reciprocity, respect, balance with land, water, animals. And of course, the thinkers are the indigenous traditions globally. Now, this approach Of course, as much as it has stemmed from the West, even in the East or the Oriental, or as of that matter, even in our country, Bharat, we see there have been instances, and more especially in the tribal belts, if we talk about the Northeast or otherwise, nature is hailed as sacred. Nature is never considered as the other. Nature is considered as relational, and when they say as relational, it is an extension of the self. So as much as the self is worshipped or the self is considered sacred, the extension of the self, that is nature too, is considered sacred, and thus their relationship with nature is that of kinship. Kinship is community, or kinship is relativeness. So they do not see nature as the other, and they are absolutely clear that when I am being sacred, or I am being worshipping nature, I am basically worshipping the self. So unlike in the ecofeminism debate, where there was a clear-cut binary between self versus the other, here the binary gets blurred, for self and nature is inherent in their journey of sacredness. We have also talked about the theocentric or the religious ecology, where the central focus is the divine creation and sacred world. The value of nature is that nature is valued, and it is after all a God's creation. And the moral community here includes humans plus all creation. The key justification to them is that duty, it is a duty to protect earth as moral and spiritual responsibly, and the thinkers or the traditions who had vouched for it has been Christianity, Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism and more. So we see that there have been various cases of nature vis-a-vis human connect, with all the approaches which we have picked up at length, and amongst all the isms, be it the anthropocentrism, the biocentrism, the zoocentrism, three of the most important isms which have been highlighted of late has been the indigenous or the relational approach, number one. Number two has been definitely the ecofeminism, as has been voted by the feminists as their absolute favorite, needless to say. And thirdly, as much as there is this current interest in deep ecology, the people also talk about ecocentrism. So these four isms have been considered pivotal to understand environmental ethics, and whenever we try to explain this term environmental ethics, we have to understand that there are this entire package of isms that is connected to environmental ethics. So environmental ethics is not from a mono lens, but it is from a subjective, a multiple lens, and it depends as to which position you are holding, whether you come from the background of ecocentrism, whether you are an ecofeminist, whether you are a Zeus sentient, or whether you are a deep ecologist. I mean, whichever way you might be interested in, that could be the possible way of understanding environmental ethics. And to conclude, environmental ethics does not really have one answer as this is it or thus proved. No, not at all. Environmental ethics, the very concept is open-ended. Open-ended because remember, there are at least 7 to 8 approaches to it, and whichever approach one might use, and of course one is welcome to use more than one method or one approach. One need not say or cannot say that my approach is the best approach, or my way or highway doesn't work with environmental ethics. And the last point here about environmental ethics is because it is to do with the domain of ethics, it is to do with the domain of what ought to be or what should be. And when we talk about what ought to be, understand that there is a clear hierarchical discrepancy or distinction with the factual world. For the factual world connotes with the question of what is. So whenever we are talking about what is environmental ethics, we will have to bring in the nomenclatures that the ethical question or the ethical framework demands from us. And what is these ethical framework? These ethical framework are the repository of questions that delves deeply into each of these approaches, each of the central focuses, each of the value of nature, the moral community, the key justification, the thinkers, the traditions, that encapsulates it as what we understand by environmental ethics. So today we have had started with a very brief introduction of what is environmental ethics, and we have tried our best to explain at least 6 to 8 core approaches of environmental ethics. We will be continuing more in our henceforth lectures. Thank you so much.